The David Pakman Show at davidpakman.com.
The fast food chain Burger King is jumping into the net neutrality game. They've got a new ad, and Craig Aaron from Free Press mentioned this earlier in the week during our interview. And it's essentially an ad from Burger King trolling the Trump administration and the Trump FCC, really, is repeal of the Obama administration's net neutrality regulations. It's a 3-minute ad. It shows Burger King setting up what they call a Whopper fast lane, where if you're willing to pay $26 for a Whopper, you get the Whopper really quickly. And if you're willing to pay less, you have to wait a long time for the Whopper to be ready. They call it Whopper neutrality. And I want to play just a little bit of the ad for you to give you a sense.
Hey, how you doing?
Do you know what number 98, what's going on with it?
Number 98, you got the Whopper?
Yeah.
So you got the slow access Whopper pass?
Wait, what?
It's on the menu right there with the fast, medium, and slow.
Slow MBPS, fast MBPS, or hyper fast MBPS. MBPS, of course, standing for making burgers per second.
So if we want a Whopper now, we have to pay $26?
Well, that's how you get it fast. That's the highest priority.
This is like a lane system?
It's gonna be like 15, yeah, fast lane, slow lane. So like maybe like 15, 20 minutes.
What are you talking about?
Burger King Corporation believes that they can sell more and make more money selling like chicken sandwiches and chicken fries, so now they're slowing down the access to the Whopper.
Were you given an option of a chicken sandwich or?
Yeah, I don't want a chicken sandwich, Robert. I want a Whopper.
Do you have any Whoppers ready that aren't?
Yeah.
Okay, so it is pretty clever. It's pretty funny. The top marketing executive, Fernando Machado, said that the company believes the internet should be like Burger King restaurants, a place that welcomes everyone and doesn't prioritize. So this is the right message. This is the correct message. But it's a company that wants to sell burgers, period, right? So I think that it's a good criticism of the law as it's been changed. I don't know that it fully explains net neutrality, but again, it's just a Burger King ad. I do think it's really clever, and it shows what would happen if you extrapolate the principles of no net neutrality into something else. In this case, it's fast food. At the bottom line, though, they just want to sell Whoppers or whatever, and that's not a criticism. It's a for-profit corporation, but I think that there's definitely other ways that if Burger King wanted to become activists in the world of net neutrality, they could sign on to a lawsuit. There's other things that they could do. Clever ad, and it's good. I still won't go to a Burger King. I haven't been there for a very, very long time. As that's what I'm most known for, actually. Not hosting the David Pakman Show, but that I haven't been to a Burger King, Wendy's, or McDonald's, or Subway.
And they used to work at Circuit City. That's big, too.
Well, yeah, but we don't talk about that.
Oh, okay.
So anyway, I think that we'll cut that out. Don't worry. People won't hear that. Make a note to delete that. I think that it's a good effort. I like it, but ultimately, it's still a company that is trying to curry favor with some portion of the population in order to sell more burgers.
I think it's okay, honestly, though. I mean, I think this is a net positive because you're displaying this in front of a demographic that normally wouldn't see this type of thing, that normally wouldn't necessarily learn about net neutrality. These are people at home watching television, and they come across this ad, or, you know, I saw this was trending on YouTube.
Right. Although I don't know that this is going to be, this is a 3-minute ad, and I don't think it's going to be a television ad. Okay. That would really be the great thing, because where people need to see this is on corporate media, where net neutrality is almost not discussed at all. That's where the ad would be key. So that's the other thing I want to mention, which is, yes, Burger King invested money in the ad, but they're not investing any money in putting the ad on television, which is really where the cost would be, buying the airtime. I would have loved it if they said, instead of a 3-minute ad, we're going to do a 30 or 60-second ad and then buy placements for it on television. But maybe the ROI on that wouldn't be quite so good, because buying advertising time on television is pretty expensive. But again, maybe I'm nitpicking, and I should just be glad that they're even talking about net neutrality at all.
I'm glad about it too. Yeah, I mean, maybe they'll boil this 3-minute ad into a 1-minute ad and put it on television too.
Maybe
I guess you never really know.
Do you want to come clean about, because we're talking about Burger King, the McDonald's vegan breakfast debacle?
Oh yeah, I've had McDonald's vegan breakfast before. Is this a new scandal?
Recently, Pat told me the other day that morning, he had McDonald's vegan breakfast.
Yeah,
And
you're really
it
putting me
was-
on the spot here. I wasn't expecting this.
I was shaken by it and almost had to take the rest of the day off. There was almost no show. What is McDonald's vegan breakfast?
Well, it consisted of a medium hot black coffee,
Totally black, no sugar, certainly no milk.
no cream.
Yep.
It consisted of the oatmeal with dried fruit, no cream.
Normally there would be cream,
Normally
and
there would
you
be
had
cream.
it made with what, water instead? Like
I
normally.
just took off the cream option.
Oh, okay.
And their hash browns. I had 3. 1, 2, 3.
And the hash browns are naturally vegan, as they say?
They're baked in oil, yeah.
Interesting.
They're fried.
They must be fried,
They're
yeah.
fried.
All right, so I think the upshot is, after revealing that, I don't think we'll ever hear about the Keurig scandal again. So that, I think, has been completely put to bed at this point.
Yeah.
But I think that there will be pretty significant fallout from this.
I guess there is an argument to be made that I am supporting a company that benefits primarily off of the sale of meats,
Yes,
animal
that's true.
products.
That's true.
But at the same time, I'm creating a demand for their non-meat and animal product options.
Yes.
So maybe they'll advertise those more.
Although I
Sell
wouldn't
more of
speak so
those.
quickly, I've still not seen good evidence that McDonald's hamburgers have meat. So I would reserve judgment until I actually see evidence
That
of
pink
that.
slime.
All right, so Burger King, nice job. I'm sure that you'll sell more burgers, probably a double benefit to doing this. But when net neutrality is on the radar of fast food companies, that is something that I think we should all be glad about, because normally it would not reach that level of sort of mainstream attention. I'm on Twitter at dpacman. The show is on Twitter at David Pacman Show. Follow us there.
The David Pacman Show at davidpacman.com. The David Pacman Show at davidpacman.com.
Today's new member of the day is Anthony Trowitsky. Anthony, thank you for being a David Pacman Show member. You can join Anthony and all of our longtime sustaining members at davidpacman.com/membership. If you like this show, consider supporting the program. Membership and Patreon are the two top ways to do it. davidpacman.com/membership and patreon.com/David Pacman Show. Let's go to the phones at 617-830-4750. Listen for your area code. Remember that the way the system works now, you'll be able to hear me talking to other callers. So you got to pay close attention for when I say your area code. And we will start with our caller from the 404 area code. Caller from 404. Who's that? What's on your mind today?
Hey, David, this is Jeff from Atlanta again. How are you?
Good. What's going on?
Not much, not much. I was going to call and ask you about Trump-Russia today, but after this week of Democrats, Democrats' behavior, I thought and asked your opinion about what you think of the caving of Democrats this past week and where we're going from there.
Yeah, I mean,
kind of
here's my big picture view. I believe that these government shutdowns are basically political theater. I don't mean that they don't have real impact, but as we've talked about, the overwhelming majority, I think Pat said something like 90% of government continues to function even during a government shutdown. So I think that these are basically, the Democrats, I think, lost in terms of the PR because they did basically cave without really getting anything. They got this vague promise of we'll do something on DACA at some point soon in the future. So I think Democrats misplayed it, but I think the entire concept of the government shutdown is like a bipartisan disservice to the American voter, taxpayer, citizen, resident, whatever. I think it's horrible.
So you think it's just more of a political football than anything else?
Yes, but that doesn't mean the Democrats didn't misplay it. I do believe that they ended up basically, they initially held out, and it made sense because Republicans, you've got the majority everywhere. You control the House, Senate, and White House. But you've got to at least work with Democrats, and they didn't, and Democrats said, well, then we're not going to go along. But then Democrats relented without having achieved anything. And of course, they said, listen, we're just doing the right thing because we got to get government back up and running. But the truth is, if it was worth stopping government over that, then it might have been worth keeping it going a little bit longer and trying to get something out of it, if that makes sense, Jeff.
Absolutely. Are these the kind of Democrats you want to support in the future? Because honestly, I think they're spineless and they They aren't standing up for what our values are. You know, they're caving to they've given so much for hashtag resistance. They've given Donald Trump everything he wants, along with this new FISA agreement, giving him the NSA and a warrantless tapping powers.
Yeah.
To bug America. I mean, 18 Democrats voted for this stuff.
Yep.
I don't want. This is what really upsets me, and this sort of ties into my whole Russian narrative, is that they use that to distract people while these things happen, while Democrats cave, while they pretend to be part of the resistance, but in reality, they're really just supporting the same policies Obama supported.
Yeah, I mean, listen, there's a lot there. There's some of that, but also there's also fake scandals. In the same way that you can say Russia's being used to distract from other things are also being used to distract from Russia. You know?
Russia
yeah, no, I get it. I got it, Jeff. Yep.
I know he's guilty of corruption with Russia. I just get disgusted.
Well, we don't know,
disgusted that all the coverage is Russia, Russia, as opposed to like the tax bill that just passed a month ago. How bad it is, and the media did a poor job of doing that. So it's the Democrats that I don't support. So anyway, well, thank you for taking my call.
All right, thanks, Jeff. Appreciate it, and always great to hear from Jeff, and a lot of good points there. 617-830-4750 is the number. Our next caller is from the 214 area code. Caller from 214, tell us who you are and what's on your mind today.
Hi, David. It's Frank McCright in Dallas, Texas.
Oh, hey, Frank. What's going on?
Nothing much. So I have a question about kind of like the racial issues that are going on in the White House, and not just in the White House, but just the lack of opportunity. Now, when I see someone like, say, for example, Stephen Miller, who's clearly an unsavory character, you know, and watch him claw his way from, you know, the reputation that he had in college and all that stuff, and he still clawed his way into the White House somehow. Yep. And no matter what happens, this guy can walk off and go, "I was in the White House." That's pretty major accomplishment. But you know, the way that the system is set up, I have a mixed background, so I would say like I look like Obama, but nobody ever says, you know, Obama was the first mixed president. They say he was the first black president. That's just how it works.
Sure.
So. Growing up, I'm 48 now. Growing up over the years, I've been able to be successful in my career, but I've seen a lot of the challenges, and it's really the opportunities like that aren't presented to people of color or even women. I was talking to a woman last night, and that, hey, you could go out and do this, you can be in this, and in the industry that I'm in, the offices that I've worked for some very major companies, Samsung, Intuit. You don't see a lot of diversity, and I think
I'm curious about that, Frank. I mean, can you give me some examples? I would be very interested to hear. In what ways do you feel that what you said, of course, is actually a mixed race background, but perceptually you're seen as a black man in the way that Obama is? How do you feel that has impacted some of the opportunities you've had?
Well, I can definitely tell you things that people have said to me. I definitely get the "what are you?" question, right? And because of my complexion, a lot of times people think I'm Latino, but I still get the stereotypes that go along with that. Like when I go to New York City, everybody thinks Puerto Ricans think I'm Puerto Rican, and they speak Spanish to me, and that's just how it is. But I've seen people's attitude change when they find out what I am. I can honestly say, and I think I would be silly to ignore the fact that I think I have not gotten jobs because of it.
Really?
Oh, absolutely. I mean, I know we don't have time, but I can tell you examples, like pure examples that were so very blatant. But the thing is, too, is that in this, I guess my question is like, how do we get who do we vote for to make true equality? Because I don't understand how the government doesn't get it, that if everybody is doing well, or if we can give everybody the opportunity to do well, our economy is going to be better. Everything is going to be a lot better.
Right.
But it just doesn't seem, especially with this administration, it's like if you're already rich, then you're good to go.
Yeah.
But other than that, you're on your own.
Well, a couple thoughts. I mean, this is a big issue, Frank, but I think one thing is the change is probably not going to come from the White House down. I think that it probably needs to come from other places. And I just don't think that while who's in the Oval Office certainly can set the direction of the country in one way or the other. But I think if we're looking to the Oval Office, it sounds almost libertarian of me to say it, but I wouldn't look to the Oval Office to deal with the issues of racial discrimination and inequality, et cetera. The other thing is we need to get an agreement. We need to see eye to eye on equality of opportunity, because there's a lot of people on the right and so-called classical liberals who say we're for equality of opportunity, but then they describe a situation that isn't really equality of opportunity. And so if you can imagine two people, someone born into a wealthy suburban situation and someone else born into a very poor urban circumstance, both whom have the same potential based on genetics, for example, right? They don't have the same equality of opportunity. That's not equality of opportunity. The fact that
totally
they were both
agree.
kind of given the same genetic underpinning.
It's just not presented as equal opportunity. It's just not.
Yes, it's not. So I think that that's, unless we come to an agreement about what equality of opportunity is, it's also going to be tough to move forward. But big issues, Frank, and I appreciate you bringing them up.
Thanks for taking the call, Dave.
All right, no problem whatsoever. 617-830-4750. Let's go to our next caller. Why don't we go to the 704 area code? Okay. Caller from 704. You're on. Tell us who this is and what's on your mind today.
Hey, this is Gavin from Chapel Hill.
Great. Go ahead, Gavin.
So it's a common conservative talking point that universities nowadays are indoctrinating students into following the doctrines of socialism and communism. Mm-hmm. As someone who has experience teaching at a university, from what I know, where do you think that this notion arises?
Well, it arises from anecdotes, right? And I think this is one of those areas where there's this movement, and I don't know if I would call it a universalist movement, or it's sort of Manichaean in many ways, where everything's got to be black and white, one way or the other. We have to have some principle that can be applied 100% to every situation, and really most things are shades of gray. So we've done a ton of stories about problems that exist on some campuses with some issues and some administrations and some students that have been concerning. But if our argument is the mere teaching of, for example, as I had at the University of Massachusetts, where I studied economics, if just having a class on Marxist economics is an indoctrination, then we're just not going to agree. And I think I'm a good example, an anecdotal example in a way, where I learned both neoclassical and Marxist economics at the college level, and I came out with my own ideas, which is that I am not a Marxist, I'm not a communist, but I believe in well-regulated capitalism, sort of reminiscent of the Scandinavian model. So I think that most of these, just like stereotypes and prejudices, Gavin, a lot of these talking points come from some fraction or element or grain of something that took place in the real world, but they're blown out of proportion.
Or some outspoken minority.
Yeah, they're blown out of proportion. Or some outspoken minority
like George Cicierello Mar on Twitter and his personal beliefs that he shares.
Yeah, I'm not sure who that is, but yes, I think that these are issues and we want to deal with the issues, but we don't want to upend education at large because we believe that it's become liberal indoctrination in some kind of broad way. I think that's crazy and there's no evidence for that.
Agreed.
All right, Gavin, thanks very much for the call. Appreciate it. 617-830-4750. I think we've got time for maybe one more call before we go to a break, and then we're going to take more calls. We've got plenty of time today. Next, we'll go to the 215 area code. Caller from 215. Hello. Tell us who you are.
How you doing, David and
Good.
Pat? My name is Michael from Philadelphia.
Right,
I have a question.
Yep.
A lot of people on the right as well as the left, they call this Russia investigation a witch hunt. But they also don't factor into the other things that Mueller is investigating, like money laundering, Trump's deals with Russian mob, as well as it was one other thing that he was investigating. I'm not sure exactly what it was. money
Well,
on it. It was
that's
something
what they
else.
think is the witch hunt, right? They think it's a witch hunt because some people want the investigation only to be about Trump-Russia collusion. But the way that these special prosecutors work is once the investigation starts, they are not limited to just certain paths or areas of investigation. They can follow all avenues if they believe a crime has been committed. So the fact that the investigation has these different avenues is part of what people believe is the witch hunt. Now, I happen to disagree, but that's their argument.
Yeah, I disagree as well. I mean, because it's like it's clear. I mean, it's clearly has been stated that a lot of things Trump has done in the past hasn't been within the law, as far as like where he's getting money from, how he pays off debts and all that. I mean, it's very clear that he's broken the law in the past.
Well, he's been fined, in fact. So there have already been areas where Donald Trump, we know, has broken. There was some kind of, it was either tax or there were various payoffs that he was fined for. I think Pam Bondi in Florida was one of them. And yeah, I think that we're ultimately going to find out some of what went on, but depending on what kind of stonewalling and interference and obstruction takes place, we may never actually get the full story. And that's what's scariest to me, Michael.
Right. Right. Okay, David, I appreciate you calling. I appreciate what you guys do.
All right, thanks so much. Really appreciate the call. Let's take a quick break, and then we will be back with more of your calls at 617-830-4750.
The David Pakman Show at davidpakman.com. Welcome back to the David Pakman Show.
Let's go back to the phones, 617-830-4750. We have a lot of people holding, and let's see where to start. Maybe with a local call. I see 617 there. Let's see who's joining us maybe from here in the Boston area from the 617 number. Who's there?
Hello?
You're on. Who's this?
This is Daniel.
Daniel, what's on your mind today?
Hey, David. So, recently came on the news from the, I believe, the Wall Street Journal, and covered the chief deputy to the Office of Drug National Control Policy. It's called the ONDCP, and it was about the 23-year-old college graduate that was put into this position.
Yeah, for people who don't know, Daniel, just for people who might be listening and don't know, basically there was a profile done where like a basically 23 or 24-year-old frat boy was going to be leading the fight against the opioid crisis for the Trump administration.
I could have done it then.
It was just a crazy, yeah, so that's the backstory. Go ahead.
Right. So, I work in addiction industry in Melnia Cass, right on Methadone Mile in Mass Ave in Boston. And,
yes, indeed.
Basically, when I read this online, I was just totally upset and heartbroken at the devastation and the deaths that happen on a daily basis. People's sons, daughters, loved ones, my loved one, other people I know. And for this administration to put somebody in that policy making, I'm speechless, as you can tell.
Yeah.
And I've seen over the last couple of days, HuffPost, carried it, and a few other places carried it. And I really think it really needs to get to the forefront, which is why I'm on your program, because you have a pretty wide base. And it's just an injustice to every American, whether or not you are affected to this or not.
Right.
Because it trickles down to the other people that are hired within his administration.
Absolutely. I think injustice is it's an injustice, and it's disrespectful to the people that are directly and indirectly affected by the opioid crisis. And I know the area you're talking about is very close to our studio. I walk through there sometimes going to lunch or to a meeting, and what you see happening out there is it's not good, right? It's really not good. And the idea that some 24-year-old frat kid, not that there's anything wrong per se with having participated in Greek life at a university, but if you read into the kid's background, you would learn a lot more about why he's probably not the right person to be leading this. It's absolutely horrible, Daniel, and I'm glad you brought it up to me.
Right. I mean, we have a clinical director here. We have residential directors, and all these people are master's level clinicians and just really highly educated in regards to policy, as well as everything. And it takes decades to amount this amount of knowledge.
Yeah.
With in I was just blown away, speechless, and like I said, I mean, and I know people don't understand about this epidemic. I know they think it's a choice. I know they think these people are using their free will to make these decisions.
Yeah.
But that's simply not true. And the thing is, the addiction is not a choice, but the ignorance is.
Especially
And
when a lot of
people
the
get it out
addiction,
there.
Daniel, as you know, is stemming from originally doctors' prescriptions, not for heroin, for example, or street purchase drugs, but for actual doctor prescribed opioids. And it's
fentanyl
absolutely
patches and
Yep.
everything. And I mean, I was at a meeting last night, a support group, where a vet came back from the war, and he was on opiates and fentanyl patches for 10 years.
Wow.
And and his life is disintegrating in his marriage, and then he decided to pick up medical marijuana as a choice. And I'm listening to this man's story, and he got off all the opiates, but yet now he's paying for the medical marijuana out of his own pocket because it's not covered under any medical plan.
It's a
So
it's a circle. It's all horrible.
It gets so insidious, and the thing is, I guess when the corporations get behind, the lobbyists get behind the medical marijuana, and there's money to be made, then maybe it'll open up to other people. But that's kind of not the point of the call. But is to get, this is not getting any better by any stretch of the imagination. And
Agreed,
we're
Daniel.
talking about Boston. You go 50 states. You go to Afghanistan. You go to countries overseas. The UK. It's everywhere. But for our own home government to take this so lightly, then put Kellyanne Conway as the drugs are you kidding me?
Yeah, it's all crazy. It's
just
a gong show, Daniel. We know it, and I appreciate you pointing it out on the program. And I do have to move on, but really appreciate the call and keep up the great work you're doing. It's very, very, very worthy work. I know a lot of people in the city working on that issue. Let's go next to our caller from the 847 area code. We're taking calls at 617-830-4750, and our next caller's from 847. Go ahead.
Hi, David.
Hey, who's this?
This is Steve.
Steve, go ahead.
From Illinois.
Great.
My question is, do you think over the rest of your life you will have more influence over people as a professor, teaching focus classes of 30 or so people at a time? Or do you think that your independent media presence will outstrip any work you could do as a standard teacher?
I think that the scale of the media endeavor is going to make it significantly more impactful than the college teaching. Now, you could make the case that by spending a semester in a room with 30 students, that you can impact them to a greater degree than what it might be if someone sees a YouTube clip or listens to a podcast or hears me on the radio for 10 minutes. But the sheer scale of it, 30 students a semester, we estimate our daily audience, our daily unique audience at many hundreds of thousands of people. Even at a greater degree of impact, the show is definitely going to have more of an impact, I believe, than the teaching.
Okay. Yeah, it's just so strange that in the U.S. it seems like less and less people care what educated people, educators and intellectuals have to say in our society, even though they're the ones who are more likely to have a deep understanding of things.
Yeah.
But in new media, you can actually influence people. So, yeah.
All right. Well, glad I was able to answer that question for you, Steve. Very much appreciate the phone call. We are taking calls at 617-830-4750. Why don't we go to our next caller from the 650 area code? 650, you're on.
Hello, David Packman?
Yes, who's this?
Can you hear me?
We can hear you.
This is Aaron.
Go ahead, Aaron.
So, I am a liberal, but I love guns. And what I've noticed after studying and looking up gun laws from various countries, typically in the more EU countries, and including Canada, you're allowed to own AR-15s with pistol grips and detachable magazines. Some are states limited to 5 like Canada, but countries like France and Germany, France is 30, and Germany doesn't really have a magazine capacity limit. I wonder how you feel about that.
So here's my thought on this. We can get into very, very micro debates about gun laws across states and types of restrictions and how they've impacted crime compared to the background crime rate, which has decreased over time, and then account for the fact that in Chicago, even though they have strict gun laws, you can drive to Indiana and buy guns. We can do all that, but I think that there's actually a bigger picture here, which is that the problem isn't just guns, it's Americans with guns, right? And that's what I'm increasingly learning, which is that there is something in American culture where we are more likely to think of a gun as a tool to go out and, quote, solve problems that shouldn't have guns involved in any way. So I think that we can slice and dice, well, Switzerland has this law, and when Australia banned guns, this happened, and here's what happened in Japan, etc. It's not just the gun laws, it's that the gun laws need to reflect what's going on in the culture, and American culture has a major, major problem with guns. So I think that we can look at gun laws elsewhere and explore what changes have happened. But ultimately, the gun laws in the U.S. need to be tailored to the culture of the U.S., and there's many toxic elements of American culture with regard to guns.
No, I agree with you. Like, we should have better background check laws and those things. But well, one of the things you mentioned, Australia banning guns. Here's an interesting fact I learned. In Australia, there are more guns now than there were prior to Port Arthur.
Okay, yeah, I'm not making any specific comment for or against any particular legislation. What I'm pointing out is that the United States has a unique problem with guns, and thus the solution is going to have to be a unique one that's tailored to the problems of the United States.
So it's going to be more geared towards the people than it's going to, like, it's going to be have to gear towards individual states, or is it going to be have to do federally? How are we going to tackle this problem?
Whether it's state or federal is less the issue. It's got to be, it has to be all encompassing in terms of dealing with both the people and the equipment that's available. But it's certainly a broader topic than what we can kind of go into today. But Aaron, I appreciate the call, and you're bringing up a lot of good points. And I know a lot of pro-gun liberals, actually, and you know, pretty common thing in Vermont and in some other places. Let's go to our next caller. Why don't we try the 702 area code? I like the idea of going to 702. And if you're with us, caller from 702, jump right in. Tell me what's on your mind.
Hey, David. This is actually my second time calling. I'm not on the speakerphone this time, so.
Oh, good, because it sounds like you are, but I'm glad you're not.
Okay, so I actually had a quick question and a little bit of a story. So on my Facebook, I was scrolling through, and one of my close friends, he is a major Republican supporter, and he was posting some false facts, right? Like about how white people don't commit crimes in the United States, all like, you know, just extremely incorrect information, right? And so I went through the hassle of having an argument with him, and, you know, on Facebook, of course, and saying, hey, the information you're posting is not correct. Those stats are completely fake.
Yeah.
And I had a discussion with other couple of friends of saying, should I do that or shouldn't? And I wanted to get your perspective on that.
If you're doing it for fun, then I would say have at it, Haas. If you're doing it to try to change people's minds, I would suggest that you put the time you spend doing that into some other kind of activism, maybe getting people to vote in the 2018 midterms or something else, because I think as an exercise of curiosity or entertainment, it's totally fine, but I don't think you're really going to impact policy by changing the minds of people like that.
And I definitely agree with you, but I feel also as well, too, that when someone does something where they post something on Facebook or Twitter or whatever it is, and they don't have an opposing force that tells them, hey, this is incorrect information, you need to get your policy straight, then I feel like, you know, there's a misrepresentation of the fact that someone who posts something that terrorists are always, you know, Muslim, or, you know, there can't be white people terrorists, and there's no opposition to that, then it becomes more accepted, is the way I feel about it.
Sure. No, I think that's a good point. It's good for them to know that there are dissenting views. But again, I think it depends on what your goal is, and I totally get that. And also, it could be more for the third-party people that see the exchange. It might be the people who are maybe less informed than that guy, who are, if they see that there's someone else pushing back, they might actually be thinking to themselves, oh, well, I'm glad to know that there's another view here, if that makes sense.
Right. Yeah. No,
do you know if has your friend been cucked? Did you find that out? Do you know that, or is he like a normal internet guy?
Well, and so it was a couple different things because he went on a tear that day, and he decided to post about how there's no white, what's it called, terrorists, and then also what's it called, climate change is a lie. He had two things on that. So on the one that climate change is a lie, he basically refuted every single document I put up. But a friend of mine who was also on the exchange and saw the exchanges says, "Hey, I didn't know that there was so much information on that." So ever since then, I've always tried to clarify for people who post, I'm not one for opinion, right? Like, hey, if you don't want to be gay, then hey, you don't have to be gay. But if you say gay people are the reason why, there's child molestation, then I feel like, that's an extremely incorrect statement, and I need to correct that.
Sure. All right, listen, hey, you're doing something interesting. It's sort of up to you in the end whether you think it's a good use of your time, but electorally at least, I think that it's not. But certainly, I've been party to a Facebook debate or two time and again. I appreciate the call. Thanks so much for calling, and thanks to everybody who called in. We will take calls again. That I promise you. And thanks to everybody I didn't get to also. We had dozens and dozens of people holding, and the calls are getting very popular, but we can't get to everybody is the sad reality.
The David Pakman Show at davidpakman.com. The David Pakman Show at davidpakman.com.
Let's get to some audience questions, starting with Willa. Willa wrote in, "Hey, David, what's hard to go back to the cheap version of after you've had the nice version?" I have a couple thoughts on this. You could apply this to almost anything, any area of life. Coffee makers, as people know. I have never owned a Keurig, and I have disdain for Keurigs. But about 2 years ago for my birthday, I was always getting just weird gifts from people that I would never use. So what I told everybody was, get me an Amazon gift card for any amount you want, because I'm going to get myself a nice espresso machine. And people got me gift cards on Amazon, and I pooled it all together and then added like $90 and got a nice espresso machine. And I can't go back now to crappy coffee machines.
That must have been expensive.
It was an expensive machine, but it cost me $90 because I just told everybody, hey, here, this is, if you want to really get me something I want, get me an Amazon gift card.
Yeah. I'm thinking about like a quality car. Like if you get used to a car with like front seat armrests and heated seats, and maybe some like the safety features like blind spot protection warning and a backup camera. I mean, how are you going to go from that to like a 1997 Chevrolet Monte Carlo?
Well, you know that now, I'm pretty sure that backup camera is standard on all cars.
Ooh.
I think. Is that true? I don't even know. I think that is true, that every car now has a backup camera. Yeah, I could see that. And I think part of this is that hedonic adaptation that people talk about, which is once you upgrade some element of your lifestyle, within some short period of time, you become accustomed to it and it becomes your new normal. It becomes your new baseline. And then you're just kind of looking for the next thing, and going backwards is very, very tough.
Yeah. And we typically think about it as like a bad thing because your standards are going up and up and up, and maybe you don't deserve to get better and better things necessarily.
Very paternalistic view.
I mean, what if like you're a musician, right? And you just start out and the first guitar that you buy is say worth $100. And then your talents improve. I mean, you deserve to get maybe like a $500 or $1,000 guitar.
What does deserve mean though in that context? You've earned it from your success or your playing skill.
For the time that you put into it, the fact that your skills are improving, all that stuff. Yeah.
But then a lot of people put in the same amount of time and they still can't afford the better guitar. So haven't they also earned it?
Yeah, but I mean, you got to be able to afford it, I guess. I mean, it's your problem.
Yeah, that is exactly the problem I think that we're talking about. Shaving razors. I used to have really crappy razors. And then through the show, actually, we got sponsorship from a number of different, like, better, nicer razor manufacturers. And now I've been completely spoiled by, like, the nice, heavy safety razor. And I can't go back to those temporary things that are disposables that weigh like a fraction of an ounce. It just feels not good, you know?
Yeah, I don't change my blades too often.
Oh, really?
Not like I can even grow a full beard.
Right.
You know,
Yeah.
I'd like to be able to.
I've actually stopped shaving. I haven't shaved in 9 months, and this is what it looks like, which is shocking to a lot of people in the audience. Yeah. I once was upgraded to first class on an international flight, And let me tell you, it is tough to go back after that. I actually going to Argentina in August. I had all these frequent flyer miles. And of course, it's like impossible to use them unless you want to fly specifically on like 3 days within a month. You might be looking to travel or whatever. So I had the opportunity I had bought the ticket, an economy ticket, but I had the opportunity to use the miles to upgrade to first class, or I guess they call now international business class. And it's better. It's better. And going back is tough, but
if it was like a 2-hour flight, I don't think that would be such a big transition to go back to.
Sure.
But if it's like you're
10
flying
and a half
across the
hours.
world and you're going to be sleeping, it's much better to be able to like lie down and get those blankets and those warm cookies that you get.
Oh, the blankets and the warm cookies are stunning. Yeah. No, it was a game changer for a 10 and a half hour flight. And once you move forward, it's tough to move back. And reality hits you pretty quick when you do that. Rose wrote in, how would libertarianism address a problem like climate change? Depends on how extreme of a libertarian you are. One argument would be, listen, businesses have an inherent incentive to regulate themselves, and no business would pollute because the publicity would be so bad that they would go out of business because nobody would buy their products, which is, of course, what I call living in a total fantasy world, in part because it's difficult to attribute the negative externalities that we know of as pollution to a particular company. Sometimes, as you might know, pollution can move around in the atmosphere away from where it originated. And it can sometimes take a long time to actually attribute a specific climate impact to a specific factory, for example. So the idea that in a libertarian paradise, no one would pollute because the incentives would be there, that no one would have an interest in polluting because it'd be bad for business. That's ridiculous, and that's been disproven time and again.
Yeah, I think the way to approach this is to go at their tagline. They always say, like, you should have the right to do whatever you want, provided that it doesn't affect other people.
Oh, yeah, and it's certainly affecting other people.
Yeah, you can definitely argue that climate change affects other people unwittingly.
There are some libertarians who might be okay with like a carbon tax based on the damage that your pollution costs. And then the business would decide, is it worthwhile to pay that? Like, hey, if you decide that generating 10 kilotons, whatever, of pollution is worth it, even if you pay for it because it generates more revenue for you, you might make the business decision to pay for that amount of carbon taxes, carbon credits, whatever. But very quickly you get to the libertarians who say, well, no, because you need a central government authority to impose those. And then if you don't pay them, they take you to jail. So it's an initiation of force.
Okay, yeah. And libertarians are also in support of government spending when it comes to like the military, right? Because that has to do with our national protection.
Right.
And you can argue that climate change is a national security concern.
Yeah.
I don't know if that would get through to them, but
I don't
that's
think
one
it
way
would
to do it
much
too.
for them. Yeah, I wouldn't think it would. There's actually an interesting argument to be made that if taxes are theft, polluting is theft, right? Some libertarians say taxes are theft because we've not consented to be taxed. Now, there's a number of ways to argue against that, but let's say you buy into that. The negative externalities of pollution are not something that the victims of that pollution have consented to, right? If you're polluting and hurting the environment and worsening living conditions for people who are just out in the world, and they've not consented to that, isn't that a form of theft of a shared resource?
Yeah.
Good luck getting a libertarian to agree with that. I think that this is actually a bigger picture issue with libertarianism, which goes beyond climate change, which is that strict libertarian dogma is just not well equipped to deal with negative externalities, period, because you have to go through a process to link the externalities to a cause, and that's where you need some kind of authority to do that.
Yeah.
And libertarians fundamentally are at odds with that.
It's interesting because there are a lot of young people who are libertarians.
They think
I'd
they
like
are
to think
anyway.
that the libertarians of today were Republicans yesterday, right, in a past generation.
Yeah.
And younger people are also open and accepting of the fact that climate change is going on.
Yes.
And I think there is a decent amount of overlap there.
Yeah.
Maybe not entirely, but there's some.
I would argue that those people aren't truly libertarians. Like, they're mostly social libertarians, and they say that they want as little government intervention in economics as possible or as reasonable. But very quickly, when the rubber hits the road, they would come to realize, oh, to have a world that looks like what I want the world to look like, the government's going to need to be a little bit more involved than strict libertarianism would prescribe.
Yeah, but they also draw a distinction between anarchy and libertarianism, right?
They tend to.
They know that the government needs to fulfill some services to
Yeah,
the public.
yeah, and then there's a gray area of what exactly that would be. Big picture, this is a problem for strict libertarian philosophy. Desu wrote in saying, how would you deal with the problem of lobbying and lobbyists? This is like a 30,000-foot issue that really requires a lot of discussion. But I think a couple points are, number one, you've got to fix regulatory capture. Regulatory capture where the players in the industry that is supposed to be regulated end up controlling the regulator or the agency that is doing the regulating. You've got to deal with that, and more broadly, the sort of revolving door that exists that Donald Trump initially claimed he wanted to fix, but of course he hasn't. If anything, he's pushed it to become an even bigger and bigger issue in his administration. You've got to deal with that in some way, and I actually think that people underestimate the impact of campaign finance on lobbyists and lobbying. If you really had anonymous contributions, like, let me give you an example. Yeah. If I believe that Bernie Sanders is better for the country, and I don't expect anything personally as a result of donating to Bernie Sanders, I would have no problem donating anonymously, but not anonymously where the public doesn't know who donated. I mean anonymously where even the recipient elected official doesn't know who donated.
Interesting, yeah.
Because if they don't know who donated, it's much more difficult for them to end up doing favors, and it might disincentivize or deflate even the desire for lobbyists to make those contributions.
You're probably going to see a lot fewer contributions, though, because if people can't get the credit for it, if companies can't get the credit for it,
why would they do it? And I think that that's good, and maybe it would get us going in the direction of public financing of elections or something like that. And it's dicey because you do want to allow underserved groups to have representation, and then the question is, how do you do it? Because just because something is a lobby doesn't mean it's necessarily good or bad. There are you can lobby for something that would be positive for the whole on the net for humanity, or negative, and that is a concern anytime you talk about just eliminating even the process by which lobbying takes place, because there are lobbies for very worthwhile causes.
I think that the revolving door is a big deal, especially because, I mean, we poked fun at Trump's ban on those who serve in his administration for 5 years can't become lobbyists.
Yeah.
Because, I mean, most of the corruption is going on in the legislative branch, right?
Yes, indeed.
I think we have to make it so that if you serve in Congress, if you serve in the Senate, you're banned for life from going into lobbying. And that's a hard thing to draw because, you know, does consulting count? Does it work the other way around? Can a lobbyist become a senator? Can a consultant become a congressman? I don't know, but I think there's a way forward on that.
There probably is, but it is tricky, especially because, like you said, consulting, I think, pretty clearly is lobbying. What about being just a lawyer, though, right? And that, a lot of times, is a way to hide lobbying efforts. And how can you say somebody who's been a lawyer and then they served in Congress, they're just going back and being lawyers? That's all they're doing. How can you prevent them from doing that? Last thing, if Congress increased how much it funds organizations like the Congressional Research Service and the GAO, the Government Accountability Office, if those agencies had more funding, they could turn out reports and investigate more policy issues. And part of the problem is that Congress ends up relying on reports that are created by lobbyists to make decisions about policy. If you eliminate their need to do that by getting better funding for these other entities, you might also kind of remove the need for lobbyists to say, hey, we would like to research X topic for you. And of course, the recommendations will be very, very good for our clients if you enact them. I think that that's a small thing, but it also could be useful and positive.
Yeah, this is a big deal. When people talk about why they disapprove of Congress, they talk about the revolving door, they talk about wanting to drain the swamp.
Yeah.
Lobbying is the heart of the issue, I think.
It's a big part of it. Lobbying and campaign finance, which are connected. They're very, very related issues. That's it for today. We have got a brilliant bonus show for you today. I hope you'll join us. You can sign up at davidpakman.com/membership, get instant access to the bonus show. You can also make a pledge at patreon.com/davidpakmanshow. $5 a month gets you instant access to the bonus show, which is coming up next.
The David Pakman Show at davidpakman.com.